Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about healthy eating for cancer survivors. My name is Marie Morandi. I'm the registered dietitian here at Lynn Cancer Institute. One of the most powerful tools to combat inflammation comes not from a pharmacy, but from the grocery store. According to Dr. Frank Hu at the Harvard School of Public Health, many experimental studies have shown that components of food or beverages may have anti-inflammatory effects. Now, you may be asking, why are we talking about inflammation? So major diseases that plague us, including cancer, heart disease, diabetes, depression, even Alzheimer's, have been linked to chronic inflammation. An eating pattern that emphasizes foods that are high in antioxidants, monounsaturated fats, and omega-3 fatty acids can help reduce inflammation. So how do I eat smart, so to speak? Well, cancer experts agree that eating a variety of colorful fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and legumes aids in the fight against cancer and other chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes. Eating a plant-based diet means you include a substantial portion of one or more vegetables and/or fruit on your plate. These foods are naturally low in calories and good sources of phytochemicals. So let me explain what phytochemicals are. Phytochemicals are naturally occurring plant nutrients, often associated with either the color, the odor, and the flavor of foods. They help to support overall health and protect our body cells from damage. Research has shown they can influence the processes inside our bodies to help to fight cancer. Some of the ways that they help to fight cancer include stimulating the immune system, blocking substances that we eat, drink, or breathe from becoming carcinogens, reducing inflammation and oxidative damage that makes cancer growth more likely. They can also prevent DNA damage and help with DNA repair. In addition to all of this, some nutrients in foods may regulate hormones. This can be an important factor for breast cancer survivors, as some of the nutrients in the family of foods, including broccoli, have nutrients that can reduce strong estrogens in the body and therefore reduce the stimulation for cancer cells that are estrogen receptor positive. So a healthy eating pattern, especially for cancer survivors, but for anybody in general, is to eat a colorful fruits and vegetables. Basically, what I like to say is eat a rainbow. The goal is 6 to 9 servings per day of fruits and vegetables. Eat one food from each color category each day to not only get your best variety and your quantity. But this takes planning. It takes thought processes, and it takes a mindset of always being aware of where you're at in your day and what you've been eating. So for example, let's talk about the color categories. So a color code system for fruits and vegetables, you have pretty much about 7 color categories. This will be red, purple, orange, orange-yellow, yellow-green, green, and white-green. Basically, these are sources of either lycopene in red foods, anthocyanins in purple foods, your various hundreds of different carotenoids in orange foods, lutein and xanthine, which are carotenoids but are found in yellow foods, those isothiazates in those cruciferous vegetables like broccoli from those green foods, and allicin from the white foods. In this case, white foods are considered garlic and onions and mushrooms. So here's a list of the various color categories and the foods that are included in these. So red foods are typically tomatoes and watermelon. The special aspect of tomatoes in this case is to get your best source of lycopene, you actually want to include cooked tomatoes in your diet. So for instance, stewed tomatoes or tomato sauce or tomato juice. So oftentimes I suggest people to go ahead and put that tomato sauce maybe on some spaghetti squash, or drink V8, or go ahead and use stewed tomatoes in a nice dish. Purple foods are pretty much all your berries, eggplant, beets, pomegranates, radishes. Orange foods are basically what we typically think of as orange foods, which is carrots and pumpkin, cantaloupe, apricots. and your winter squash. Winter squash is a little bit more concentrated in your carotenoids than your summer squashes will be. Orange-yellow is pretty much all of your citrus. Your yellow-green are your green leafy vegetables, essentially, along with honeydew melon and asparagus and zucchini. And then your green food is that family of broccoli, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale, and cauliflower. And again, like I said, the white foods are your onions and garlic. So how would somebody do this? How would you have a rainbow day? So here's an example. Breakfast could be a multigrain cereal with nuts and a cup of berries, of course, with your milk. Snack on watermelon with some yogurt. Lunch, mixed green salad with eggplant, red and orange sliced peppers, onions, cheese. Of course, you're going to have your 3 ounces of protein in there and a whole grain. A snack might be mandarin oranges and some cheese, and then dinner would be, let's say, for instance, baked chicken or fish with cauliflower, garlic mashed, and asparagus. So this works out that our red food was our watermelon. Our purple foods was actually the blueberries and the eggplant. Orange foods was our red and orange sliced bell peppers. Our citrus was, of course, the mandarin oranges. We had mixed green salad and asparagus. And the cauliflower mash gave us those cruciferous vegetables. And, of course, leeks and garlic and onions were kind of worked in there. And that's how we filled our day with our rainbow of colors and an abundance of fruits and vegetables. So along with the same healthy eating pattern for cancer survivors is the recommendation to minimize saturated and trans fats. Saturated fats is linked to many forms of cancer, including breast cancer. Instead, eat a good source of omega-3 fats from fish or fish oils, flaxseed, walnuts, and then you want your other healthy oils like olives, avocado, nuts, seeds, canola, sesame oil, and rice bran oil. Foods high in omega-3 fats are salmon, mackerel, tuna, halibut, walnuts, flaxseed, chia seeds, sardines, cod liver oil, herring, and oysters. So omega-3 fats provide us with the anti-inflammatory oils that support our bodies as far as reducing inflammation, reducing the risk of cancer. It's more associated with reduced cancer risk than your saturated fats, which have been linked to more cancers. So some of the research involving fat and cancer involves a relationship between excess intake of animal fat, mainly from red meat and high-fat dairy foods, with increased risk of breast cancer. This was found in premenopausal women, but has also been found in postmenopausal women in the WINS study, which looked at a low-fat diet as it improved breast cancer survivorship. So fat has also been linked with high risk of colorectal recurrence and poorer survival. So it seems saturated fat is the highest link between cancer and fats versus your monounsaturated fats, which would be your olives and nuts and seeds, and of course your fatty fish. So I use this as an illustration, an example of the different influences of fats in our body. So this is a chart of omega-6 fats versus omega-3 fats. Omega-6 fats is your corn oil, your soybean oil, cottonseed oil, and then of course your high-fat meats and dairy. These oils basically provide what's called arachidonic acid into our body systems. On the other side is the sources of omega-3 fats. So you're going to get omega-3 fats from flax seeds, walnuts, canola oil, and then your fatty fish, salmon, herring, mackerel, and sardines. So omega-3 fats come into play and break down to your EPA, your DHA, your DPA. Okay? The reason why I show this as an example is because let's say we take metabolic pathway in the body and we compare arachidonic acid as a fatty acid substrate for that metabolic pathway versus your fish oil, your EPA. So what happens is that the arachidonic acid goes into the system, into these COX-1, and comes out with prostaglandin 2 and these things. These hormone basic metabolites end up influencing proliferation, influencing angiogenesis and invasion and potential metastasis. So they're more inflammatory, basically. Increases that risk of cancer and increases that risk of cancer progression. So these are pro-inflammatory, let's say, processes. Now, if you have EPA as a source of fat into that same pathway, you end up with a different prostaglandin, a different hormone outtake, and then you end up with the exact opposite. Anti-proliferation, anti-angiogenesis, reduced cancer risk, and reduced risk of progression. So I think that is a really good example of how different nutrients that we consume affect our bodies differently. So again, this is an example of how a fat can either be inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. So we want to stick with those sources of EPA and DHA, which again would be those flax seeds, that walnuts, canola oil, and your fatty fish. Okay? So smart choices when it comes to the fats that we consume are nuts of any kind, and a nut butter, olives, seeds like sunflower seeds, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, avocado. The best option for me usually and for weight management is to choose whole foods as a source of your healthy fats and use very small amounts of the oils themselves. The oil, if you eat too much, ends up building up too many calories into the diet. You do better when you eat the whole food itself. So, and then of course a good suggestion is to make your own salad dressing. I find that when you're in the grocery store and shopping, the majority of the salad dressings on the shelf are going to be soybean oil based. So that's that bad fat, that inflammatory fat. So you want to find something that's based olive oil, canola oil, flaxseed oil, or just make it yourself. It's very simple to just mix up an oil, a vinegar, and some nice herbs and spices or something. So that healthy eating pattern for cancer survivors also recommends minimizing the intake of refined carbohydrates like white breads, pastas, rolls, wraps, donuts, white rice, and eating more whole grains, such as brown rice and quinoa, barley, bulgur, multigrain breads, and wraps and crackers. The reason why you want to choose whole grains is a whole grain includes all three parts of the kernel: your bran, your endosperm, and your germ. The bran of that kernel contains your fiber, as well as B vitamins and a lot of different minerals. The germ portion of that grain contains your antioxidant-rich vitamin E, healthy fats, your B vitamins more, and then the majority of those cancer-fighting plant-based nutrients. So in the process of making a white flour, we lose almost half of your B vitamins, your vitamin E, your folic acid, your calcium, your phosphorus, your zinc, your copper, your iron, and your fiber, all lost in that processing to take a whole grain to a white flour. Magnesium in whole foods acts as a cofactor in many, many different enzyme systems in the body, and that is lost in that processing as well. So minerals from whole grains, including quinoa, can help protect our cells from damage, and that potential damage can lead to cancer growth. So whole grains also contain betaine, which is a plant-based nutrient that has been linked to lower levels of inflammation by lowering homocysteine levels, lowering C-reactive protein, and tumor necrosis factor. Components of whole grains are also able to reduce estrogen in the body, which is very interesting, protecting against breast cancer. So high fiber foods are known to protect also against colon cancer. So oftentimes I hear people talking about, I'm not eating any bread or cereals, I'm not eating any carbs because of the link between sugar and cancer. And it's not that direct of a link where you would want to give up your whole grains. You don't necessarily want to give up quinoa and brown rice and multigrain cereals or breads for these very reasons. Now, some of those anti-inflammatory grains, barley, buckwheat, millet, quinoa, brown rice, or wild rice, or even black rice we've cooked with in the past in some of our cooking demonstrations, bulgur wheat, And of course, other high fiber starches like beans and peas give you some good healthy carbs. So that healthy eating pattern for cancer survivors will also encourage you to spice up your foods. So ginger, curry, turmeric, garlic, and many, many other spices have their own cancer-fighting potential and cancer-fighting nutrients. Along with that, drinking green tea up to 4 cups a day, unless for some reason it interacts with a medication that you're taking. And then Asian mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, maitake mushrooms, reishi mushrooms, boost up the immune system and help to fight cancer. So some of those other great spices, turmeric, garlic, basil, rosemary, parsley, cloves, ginger, which is really great for the stomach, especially for cancer patients who have that nausea, that gastritis. Fennel is really nice, cardamom, nutmeg and cumin is all kind of good, and peppermint, all good for the GI tract, and along with those potential cancer-fighting nutrients. So as much as possible, flavor your foods and include these in your recipes, because healthy foods don't have to be tasteless. And you want to use these foods to kind of boost up that flavor. A healthy eating pattern also, when it comes to the protein intake, you want to eat lean sources of protein, basically your chicken and fish. You do want to cut back on red meat and full-fat dairy foods. Some people choose not to eat red meat at all, which is reasonable. But you do lose out on sources of iron and B12, so you want some other sources of protein in your diet. They're going to give you those nutrients. Processed meats I would definitely avoid. Processed meats are going to be your salted or cured hot dogs, salami, pepperoni, bacon, exactly. So unfortunately, these have a lot of carcinogens, a lot of salt added, a lot of nitrates and phosphates that are potential carcinogens. So you want to fill only about 1/4 of your plate with protein, and that's drastically different than the typical American diet. Typical American diet has 1/2 your plate or more with a big piece of meat. So there is good evidence that red meat, processed meats, and high-fat dairy in some cases increase the risk of many different kinds of cancers. So in this case, your best options as far as anti-inflammatory proteins are your fatty fish, so salmon and tuna and mackerel and herring, all those fatty fish. Eggs, which I think is great because eggs have gotten a really bad rep over the years as far as being unhealthy, which they're not. Any of your nuts, almonds, Brazil nuts, walnuts, just for example. Beans and legumes and lentils and peas and chickpeas, as far as beans go, edamame and organic tofu. Now, just as a comment when it comes to soy, it's interesting, soy again has also been demonized over the years and not supported by research. The research actually supports the fact that soy foods don't influence breast cancer risk, don't influence breast cancer recurrence. And actually, they have found that when people include soy foods in their diet as a cancer survivor after a year, they actually have less risk of dying from their cancer. So it's important to, if it's something that you enjoy and you want to include in your diet, don't worry about it. Sesame seeds, boneless, skinless, of course, chicken, turkey are also anti-inflammatory proteins and good choices. Now, oftentimes, especially down here in South Florida, because we have such good weather all year round, we like to grill, right? Grilling out, unfortunately, produces carcinogens specifically in protein that you're going to grill. Chicken, fish, meat, any of those protein foods, when they're cooked at very high temperatures, produce these carcinogens. So the best bet when it comes to reducing this risk and reducing this production of these carcinogens is first to marinate meats before grilling. That marination, the combination of the vinegars and the oil and the other components of a marinade will protect the proteins from becoming damaged. Raise the meat off of the flames so you avoid the flare-ups, so you don't get that black charring on the meats. You can pre-cook the meat at a much lower temperature to shorten that exposure time to the high heat. And interestingly enough, parsley has a component to it that actually helps to neutralize carcinogens in smoke. So including parsley either with your meat or in that meal may help you a little bit as far as protecting against the effects of that grilled meat. So something to definitely take into consideration. Now, healthy eating pattern for cancer survivors, we've talked about eating a rainbow. We've talked about a high intake of fruits and vegetables, choosing whole grains, choosing the healthiest of fats when it comes to, for example, the olives and olive oil and the fatty fish. Getting that abundance of nutrients from spices and from green tea and anti-inflammatory agents. You also definitely want to achieve and maintain a healthy weight. So extra weight has been linked to increased risk for breast, prostate, and colorectal cancer. Just a little makes a difference. Just a little bit of weight loss can make a big difference. A study showed that 5% change in body weight reduced insulin, hunger hormones, and inflammation hormones significantly in that person's body. So you don't have to become super thin in order to gain the benefit of losing weight. So controlling weight by limiting high-calorie foods. These are foods that have a lot of fat and sugar added in. So drinking fewer beverages high in fat or added sugar, I think that is a significant factor in a lot of people as far as being overweight. Sweetened beverages don't promote a feeling of fullness, and extra calories limit sweet desserts and foods with added sugars. Simple sugars don't shut down that I am hungry hormone, which means that you may be taking in 250 calories from a soda, but you're still going to be hungry. You're still going to want more food. Unfortunately, that doesn't go well with trying to manage your weight. So you want to eat more low-calorie foods, high-fiber foods, high-water content foods, like fruits and vegetables, because they fill you up. And they provide all of those nutrients that the body is needing so that you can shut down those hunger hormones and feel satisfied. So focus on filling half your plate of food with fruits and vegetables without the added sugar, butter, or cheese. Add quality lean proteins to each meal to maintain your muscle mass, because it's an important factor if you are trying to lose weight. You want to include more protein so that you don't lose protein mass. Use healthy fats in small quantities, preferably the whole food rather than the oil. If you remember the study that they did with breast cancer survivors that showed a reduced risk of recurrence, the people in the study were only taking about 33 grams of fat in a day, which is very, very low. So you want to kind of be aware of that. Even though avocado and olives are great, they add up quickly. So in addition to that, taking about 3 servings of whole grains daily will give you your nutrients that you need without going excessive as far as the carbs go. So basically, in summary, we want to work toward a plant-based diet with half of each meal or snack composed of fruits and vegetables. Choose lean proteins, unprocessed preferably, and choose those heart-healthy oils. Choose whole grain products without a lot of added sugars and saturated fats. And most importantly, eat a rainbow. Thank you very much. We look forward to our next class. Thank you.